Hey.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for the first STAR Scholars and Comparative and International Education Society International Students Special Interest Group webinar. We're really excited to have you joining us this afternoon. We'll be joined today by one fantastic speaker and another fantastic commentator, Marguerite Dennis and Uttam Gaulee. Marguerite will be sharing more information with us about herself and her accomplishments, as well as Uttam, but today's panel is going to be focused on building a successful career in higher education, which especially Marguerite, is the director of the STAR Scholars Mentorship Program, really understands that for young and aspiring academics, there's a lot of steps that aren't always easily known or well advertised to building a successful career in higher education, whether that be an academic path or a non-academic path. And so today we hope that you'll get some really useful tips and knowledge about how you can build a successful career for yourselves. So to give you more context for the structure of the panel, we'll be having about 40 minutes for Marguerite and Uttam to provide their thoughts. Uttam will be chiming in with commentary. We have a Q&A section of the panel today. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A bar and we'll be collecting them. But questions will be held until the last 20 minutes of the panel. So please hold on to your questions. We'll get to them, and we want to make sure we give time for our speakers today to really give information first, and we'll get to your questions afterwards. All right, so without further ado, I will let Marguerite take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon, myself and Uttam. This is, as Emily mentioned, this is the first in a series of webinars that will be presented by STAR on leadership and mentoring in higher education. This is important to me, very, very important to me, because I never had early on in my career mentors, and this is a way for me, and I'm sure Uttam feels the same, a way to give back to a profession that has been very, very good to me. Over the next 40 minutes, I hope to share with you some of the professional accomplishments that I've had, how I achieved those accomplishments, but more importantly, I want to share with you the mistakes I have made to prevent you or to guide you perhaps into not making the same mistakes. I used to tell my staff, I've made every mistake there is to make, but I never make them twice. Okay, so hopefully I will be able to prevent you from making some of the mistakes that I have made. I realize that many of you participating in this webinar may be just at the beginning of your academic or administrative career. And although I have taught graduate students on higher education management, I am primarily an administrator. I have spent the last 45 years of my life in various administrative functions. I began my career at St. John's University. I began as a student worker, and I moved up to being Assistant Director of Admissions and Financial Aid. From there, I moved on to Georgetown University. I was located in the medical center, and I became an assistant dean at Georgetown at the medical center. And then finally, my last position at Suffolk University in Boston. I was the vice president for enrollment and international programs. I had a staff of 100, and I was responsible for a $300 million budget every year. In addition to managing the admission and the financial aid and so on at Suffolk University, I was also responsible for developing all of their international programs. And I had branch campuses that I started in Madrid, Spain, and Dakar in Senegal, and various collaborations throughout the world was part of my portfolio. In 2011, I founded my own consulting company, which focused on creating strategic international plans for colleges and universities throughout the world. And I have spent the last 8 years, and I have the luxury now of doing writing and research, but also helping colleges and universities to create what I call sustainable plans, not something that is good for just 1 year, but something that will be sustainable throughout the years. I've written over 200 articles on higher education. I've published 7 books on the subject, everything from financial aid to international student mobility. And so now I invite you to just sit back, you know, as they say on the airline, sit back, relax, enjoy the flight, enjoy this webinar. There are no graphs, there are no slides, there are no charts. There's nothing for you to do except to listen. Listen to me. At a later date, I will provide the STAR administrative team with all of the information that I'm sharing with today. But just relax and see if anything what I am going to share with you over the next 40 minutes or so is resonating in your professional life and something that could be of value to you in the future. I'm going to begin with 15 recommendations that I'd like to share with you. When I was teaching my course to graduate students on higher education administration, I asked them, what is the single most important quality that a higher education professional should have? Nobody ever got my answer or what I consider it to be. And it may surprise you. For me, and for the people that I have observed that have been successful over their administrative careers, was the quality of curiosity. They were never satisfied with what the data was showing or what the research was showing. They were always looking for something beyond, something that I call horizon thinking. They were curious to know more, not just about what was happening in their subject area. And when we get to the end of my presentation, I have about 12 books that I'm recommending for you to read or to consider reading. You'll be surprised at some of the titles of those books. They have nothing to do with higher education, yet they have been instrumental to me in planning my research, in conducting my research, and in planning my strategic planning seminars. So that's the first thing I would say. If you're going to be successful, be curious. Want to know more, want to know why, want to go sub rosa, want to do more than everybody else is just on the surface doing, thinking, teaching, planning. That's the number one thing. The second thing, and I've hinted at this, to be widely read, not just in your subject area. But again, when I get to the titles of some of the books at the end of this webinar, you'll see that the breadth and scope of what I read is very, very diverse, but it's always folded back and has helped me in my professional career. The third thing that I recommend for you is to build your brand internally, externally. As what? As a team player, as a collegial and curious coworker, as somebody who can be trusted, either with information or with something that someone would like to share. Be your own cheerleader. You know, at the end, as a young administrator, we all had to produce annual reports. I never waited for the end of the year. I met with my chief administrator at the half of the year, in the in the typical semester that starts in September, ends in January, and then ends in May. I would meet in January, and I'd go to my administrator or my supervisor and say, this is what I've done so far. How does it look to you? How am I doing? You know, I'd have charts, I'd have graphs, and at the end of that mini annual report, what I would have is my supervisor's recommendations, suggestions for what I could do better. What am I not doing? What am I not seeing? I would volunteer for a job. Let me give you an example. In my last administrative position, what I mentioned to you was I was in charge of all international programs. And I got an idea one day to create what I called an international data map. It sounds very strange, right? But what I suggested to this group of young, very young professionals was I wanted to know if I was going to recruit, let's say in Indonesia, I wanted to know how many courses we taught in Indonesia or the area. I wanted to know if we had any faculty members from that particular country. I wanted to know if there was any research that was published from that country. I wanted to know how many students we had enrolled from that country. We did that with the 60 countries that we were considering, either we weren't recruiting in or we were considering. So that when any recruiter went into a country, they had a portfolio of information, not just how many students do we have, but they had this whole entire picture, a complete picture. Well, I asked somebody to do it. Extra work, not in their job description. The young woman who did that now has moved up the administrative ladder at three other schools that makes my heart sing whenever I get another notice from her that she has moved up. One, she loved doing the research. Two, thank you, Uttam. I need all of that.
Yes.
She loved doing the research.
Very inspiring.
Thank you. She loved doing something different. You know, oftentimes when you take on a new responsibility, you're doing something different. It enriches your life. It's not more work.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, if you love what you're doing, it's not work. It's not work. I sit at the desk where I'm conducting this webinar every day for 3 or 4 hours. The hours go like that. It's not work for me. It's what I love to do. And that's what I hope will happen to each of you in your professional career, be it an academic or an administrative career. The next thing I would recommend is that you develop new skills. I did not. I am not technologically savvy. I did not do that because I was lazy and because I had 100 people that would do it for me in my last job. But that was a weakness on my part. Develop the skills, identify the ones that you need to further develop, and then get the help, get the professional help to do that. Cultivate mentors. I never had a mentor. I never had anybody that took me under their wing and said, Marguerite, you're doing this right. Marguerite, you're doing this wrong. But be careful. Make sure that the mentor that you ask to help is somebody that you admire and that you trust. And most people like being asked to be helpful. Most people enjoy that, regardless of how important their title is or their position. Be honest with your supervisor, with your coworkers, and especially with yourself. Again, if what you are doing you love, that's who you are. You can't separate your work from who you are. That will come forward in the way you conduct yourself during the day, in the research that you do, in the writing that you do. If you are, on the tenure track, all of that will become apparent. Never, ever, ever, ever participate in gossip or office politics. I cannot tell you how many very talented people I did not promote because their currency was gossip. Their currency was getting bits and pieces of information on people and then bringing it to me. So I had a rule. You can come in to my office, ask me anything, challenge me on any decision I've made, but never, ever come to me and talk about somebody, either a coworker, a supervisor, somebody in another department. That was for me, for people trying to move up the administrative ladder in my department. Remember, I had 100 people for whom they could have moved up because that was my management style. But if you spoke about people and if you participated in the office politics or gossiping, that was never going to work. That is probably one of the deadliest things that young people do. They think by squealing or finding fault with somebody and bringing that information back to their supervisor, they are going to get brownie points. Works just the opposite. Embrace technology, even if you don't understand how it's working in higher education. You know about MOOCs, you know about brick and clicks, you know about online technology, you know about all of that. Maybe you don't agree with any of it. Before today's webinar, I read a book about a professor who said that's not teaching. That's just, commercializing higher education. Maybe that's true, and maybe you feel the same way, but it's a reality. It's a reality. When we had this campus in Dakar, Senegal, and it was a 2+2, 2 years in Dakar, 2 years in Boston. And many of the students could not afford to come to Boston. The costs were prohibitive. And what we did was to develop an online program. And as I was doing a lecture once on African recruitment, and somebody challenged me on that. And I said, okay, no, of course it's not the same thing as being in a classroom in Boston. Of course it's not. But without that online component, those students would never have been able to complete their degree. So for a segment of the world's population, for a segment of it, it is very important that they be able to have this technology. Don't be the last in and the first out. I can't tell you, if people are looking at their watches coming in the morning or going home, that is not, that's not how you're going to get promoted. But if you love what you're doing, the clock doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. You're doing what you love to do. Know when it's time to leave the dance. Know when it's time to retire in place. I have so many professionals, so many colleagues, so many dear friends who stayed on and on and on and on because they were comfortable, they felt secure, and they weren't. Most of them were asked to leave eventually, and many of the schools that I have consulted with, it was to fill in for people who had been asked to leave. The time had passed, and they didn't realize that. Never stop being curious, and think from the end. And I'm going to mention this over and over again in my comments. Think from the end. What is it that you want in your professional life? What is it that you want? Only you can answer that. I can't. I mean, this is a personal and professional journey for each of you that you're taking. You're doing it today in part. You'll do it after this webinar. You'll do it tomorrow when you're in class. What is it that you want to do? I used to get very frustrated when people would say to me, well, what do you want to do in 5 years? Well, where's higher education going to be in 5 years, you know? This question had to be asked in a much more broader way. Those are some of the things. Think from the end. Maybe I should have started this with that, but I'll end with that. Now I'm going to talk to you about the pitfalls, the mistakes I made. And I've made them all. I have. I must share that with you. I created environments and working environments that were not good. I've often said since I left my last professional position that I wish I was then the professional person that I am now. I wish I had had the time, the patience, the wisdom that these last 8 years have afforded me. I have the luxury of being more curious about how to manage people. So here are the things, bear in mind, I'm not reading just pitfalls, I'm reading the mistakes I made. First thing I did, my last job, I didn't conduct a proper search. I was not a good fit for that institution. My value system and my curiosity and my change management style was inconsistent with the values and the culture of that institution. But I was very impressed with the title, with the corner office, with the salary, and with having, 100 people reporting to me. That was what I thought I had worked my professional life for. I was, I think, 45 or 48 when I became a vice president. That was a big deal for me. I started as a work-study student. To think that I would be one day in the corner office calling all the shots, traveling all over the world, signing articulation agreements, opening up campuses around the world, was a big deal to me. But I was not a good fit. And I suffered, and my family suffered terribly for many years. And I was at that institution for 13 years. The first 3 were hell. And then I think we each got adjusted to each other. Don't be impressed by the salary or, like I was, the corner office or the title. It's got to be a good fit. I tried to change things too quickly, and the culture couldn't absorb it. They just could not absorb it. Why are we opening up a campus in Africa? Could not absorb it. This was a first-generation commuter school. It wasn't a good fit. Yeah? Ineffective team building. I was terrible at it. I was a do it my way or the highway kind of person. The next webinar, I've asked 2 wonderful colleagues to create the webinar on team building because over the last 20 years, I've observed how they've done it, and they've done it so well. So I'm not qualified because this was a mistake that I made. I took sides once between the president and the provost, and I paid dearly for that. I paid very dearly for that. I should have remained neutral. I should have remained above the fray. Now you may be, we're only up to the 6th pitfall, but it's an important one. Never neglect your family. And I did. I can't take back the years and the days and the things that I missed with my 2 daughters or with my husband. Can't take those back. I cannot tell you how many young people I have spoken to when I've done my consulting work, and I try to emphasize that, and they nod and they think they agree. And I'm thinking of one person in particular. For 5 years, I told him, don't do the 14-hour days, you can never get back. And he was let go by the university that he was so devoted to. Be devoted to yourself, to your subject area, to the work that you do, and to your family. I neglected my health. You can't get that back either. Can't get that. I'm still taking blood pressure medicine because I was such a type A to begin with, and then the work that I was doing was so complicated and was so difficult, and I was reminded every single week, how close are you, Marguerite, to making that $300 million budget? Because we're depending on you. We are depending on you. The president used to say, I could leave tomorrow and this place would be okay. If you leave, Marguerite, it won't be. And that was a lot of pressure to put on me. It was a lot of pressure I put on myself. I didn't network. I'm sure you're all, especially young people, you're so good at this. Whether you do it at conferences or whether you do it through social media, you know how to network. I didn't. I didn't have a big colleague base, and I certainly had no one that I could share my frustrations with, a mentor that could have helped me, perhaps if I had networked better. I didn't get my doctorate. Here's my arrogance again. I was at Georgetown at the time, and I started the degree at American University. And the first class, and this is not a slam against the professor, the university, or the program. The first class was so boring because I had been doing this work already for 25 years that I thought it would be a waste of my time. That has hindered me. And the research that I'm doing now, I think, my gosh, I could have been doing this research getting my EDD or my PhD. Big mistake. I know most of you are probably in doctoral programs, so this won't be a pitfall for you, but it was for me. And then I stayed too long at the dance. I stayed too long at the last university that I was employed, and it didn't turn out very well for me or for the university. Here are some of the questions. Again, listen to these questions because they're unusual, I think. These are some of the questions that I would ask if I were you looking for a job or a promotion. Why do you want this job? Why do you want it? Thinking from the end, why do you want it? Again, if it's salary, if it's the corner office, not good enough. Not good enough. How can you serve this organization? What do you bring to the table? Whether it be, soft skills, emotional intelligence. What is it that you bring that perhaps other candidates do not? How will you define success for yourself? How will that be? For me, it was very easy. I made the numbers, I made the budget. That really wasn't success. And again, it wasn't until I left that I realized that success was not just the numbers and the money that those numbers brought in. Will the work be meaningful? Will the work be meaningful to you? Will it take you deeper either into your subject area or into your administrative professional life? Is there a possibility that this position would give you a bigger knowledge base? Would it allow you to develop new skills that you don't have now? Would it make you feel comfortable outside your comfort zone? Huh? That does sound perhaps like a contradiction, but sometimes I have felt, again, since I've been doing work for myself, for my own company, the more I stretch myself, the more I do things that are not, I haven't done before, the better I am for that. Are there opportunities for advancement? And I don't think this is being ambitious. I think that's a legitimate question to ask while you're going through your interviewing process. And my next seminar is going to talk about resumes and presenting yourself, branding yourself during an interview. I've done some interesting reading, and I think that'll be also a good webinar. But what are the opportunities for advancement in this organization? Very important. What are the qualities that the college or university that you're interviewing for, what are they looking for? What are they looking for in a candidate? What are the values? I'm not talking about mission statement, vision statement, all of those things that a lot of those reports that get put on a wall and, you know, they're never looked at after they're done. What is the value system of this university? Does it match your own? And then finally, how will this position affect my professional life, my family life? We don't ask ourselves that when we're interviewing for a job. I mean, it doesn't happen, but you should, because long after this position is gone, your family will still be there. And you want to make sure that you leave something intact. Again, mistake that I made. Here are some of the books that I recommend that you read. Again, no need to copy anything down. All of this will be provided for you by the STAR people at some point. We'll decide how we get the information to you. Higher Education in the Digital Age. I had a hard time reading that because I'm technologically challenged, but I read it. And it was very important for me in the research I was writing on online learning. The End of College. Creating the Future of Learning in the University of Everywhere. I've written a lot of the universities of nowhere and the universities of everywhere with regard to some of the schools that I have visited. Clayton Christensen, you've got to read his work. The Innovative University, that's a must. He's predicting things in 2011 that have already come to fruition. Ah, very good. There you go. We did not plan this. Those of you that are looking at us, we did not plan this. Ryan Craig's book, College Disrupted, The Great Unbundling of Higher Ed. Here's what I was referring to before about something that is not in my subject area, but it was so valuable to me in my research. A look at the demographic and socioeconomic structure of the world in 2032. 2032, and that helped me a great deal. Tom Friedman's work is very good. Thank you for being late. Richard Haas's book, A World in Disarray. The last book that I wrote was International Student Mobility and the New World Disorder. And I followed very closely what Richard Haas wrote in A World in Disarray. Blue Ocean Strategy, again, as a recruiter, that was very important to me. Randy Pouch, The Last Lecture. Now you may say, Dr. Pouch was a computer science professor at Carnegie Mellon. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and his last lectures focused on what is really important in life. And although it was published in 2008, I think that the lessons learned in that book are as relevant today. I read it again in preparing for this webinar. I read it in 2008. I read it again to share with you because I think it's so important. And lastly, this book, for those of you that are doctoral students doing research or planning to do research, or if you're writing articles, Factfulness by Hans Rosling, The 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think They Are. What he has done is to change the way research is conducted. That is a must. For those of you, trust me on this one, because you'd think, well, you know, it's just another book that I have to read. I have so many books in my subject area. This will change how you do your research. The recommendations and the reading list and the pitfalls and everything that I've shared for you today, they're not exhaustive. I mean, I could talk another hour to you. I wish we had more time. I have about 6 minutes left before we turn this over to Uttam and to you if you have any questions. But what I would like to share with you, that this professional journey that you are on is also a personal journey. You can't separate the two. If you love what you do, it's not work. And everybody will know that. You want to know how to get promoted? Love what you do. Bottom line, love what you do because your work will be a reflection of that, both professionally and personally. Be curious. Be curious. Never be satisfied with what you're reading or the data. And that's what Factfulness will tell you. Factfulness, the book that I referenced earlier, will show you that when you read something or you do your own research and there's a fact, unless you have other facts to back up that fact, it's useless. It's meaningless. Okay? I had to change the way I write my articles and do my research. And after I published my last book, I did a follow-up white paper monograph a year later. And the level of the way I approached the subject matter that year after, because I had read this book, was so much better than what I had done the year before. And I'm talking about 2018, 2017. So it was very, very recent. Place a high value on yourself, on your ability to solve problems, to exercise good judgment, to be collegial. You don't have to be a freight train running over everybody else that's jockeying for a new position. If you do what you love and you do it with integrity and you do it with a sense of a contribution. You know, that's what Uttam and I are doing today. We are giving back. What a joy for me, and I'm sure I don't want to speak for him, but he's nodding, so I think that's probably his feeling as well. This is pure joy, and I have to, Emily, please thank everybody at STAR for initiating this initiative, because it has been, I have looked forward to this for months since we decided in May to go forward with this. This is a way for me to give back to a profession that has been very, very good to me. I paid my dues, but I've contributed to that profession. And I feel that the contribution I hope I have made today to at least get you started to not making some of the mistakes that I made will help you in your professional, your personal journey. Uttam, I think we'll turn it over to you now. They're tired of listening to me.
Not at all. I was totally fascinated and
thank you.
Spellbound. Thank you so much. You are a truly, truly shining, bright star. We couldn't find a better
thank you.
director to lead our mentorship initiative. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think you are living a life that is definitely a joy and wealth of knowledge and experience. And you are an accomplished author. You are more than a doctorate or PhD, whatever. What you shared today is very, very precious. And a lot of it resonated with myself.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I appreciate your candidness and honesty in sharing your own pitfalls. It takes a lot of courage. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
The journey from John's University to Georgetown to Austin to Spain and Senegal, and your divided time between Dakar and Boston. Mm-hmm. So it brings a lot, and you have offered a lot for us to digest. I really want to appreciate that. There are quite a few things here. I do not see a reason to bring another point here, because there's so much to ruminate on and actually to digest. So if you don't mind me maybe asking you to elaborate on some of the key phrases, would that be okay?
Yes, perfect.
Because, I think what resonated me with most is cultivating mentors.
Mm.
I mean, it's easier said than done, but you say people like to be asked.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that I had known this long ago. And I think this is going to be one of the very important key learning point for our younger scholars, emerging scholars, in our audience, if they're listening too. This is a very, very important life lesson.
Yeah.
Because it always feels like we are like dazzled out of the personalities when we come closer to an accomplished person like you. Marg, I would say I was dazzled out when I first saw you in San Francisco.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. So, coming and asking whether you could be my mentor, I think it takes courage also, and it's very liberating to know that that is a fact. Thank you so much. And another idea, would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? I think I just tried to.
I think you've hit upon a really weak spot in my administrative journey.
Mhm.
I think there was a combination, Uttam, of shyness and arrogance. I'll put the two together. I felt that a lot of the stars, if you will, no pun intended, in my different, whether it be at St. John's or at Georgetown or at Suffolk University in Boston, they wouldn't. I was too shy to go in and ask. And yet, when younger people came in and asked me, I was thrilled. So there was a combination of ignorance, shyness, and arrogance to the extent that I can do it better. I'll just do it better. I'll just work harder. I'll just work longer. I'll be more, I have this mini annual report. Nobody else is doing that. When I look back on my career, it was a real, for example, if I had a mentor and I had began this doctoral program in Washington, and I went and I decided I wasn't going to take the full course. If I had a mentor that really cared about me and moving me along, he or she would have told me not to do that. Stick it out, Marguerite. Okay, so you're bored in this particular class, but think about it. You like to write. You will ultimately have to write a dissertation. You'll love doing. There could have been so many ways that could have been massaged to allow me, to encourage me to stay in that doctoral program. I would have had different jobs, Uttam, I have to say to you. And the staying too long at the dance was because I had gotten to a level, both title-wise, portfolio-wise, and salary-wise, there was no place for me to go. Unless I was going to apply for, even to be a president. I have a colleague who is an enrollment manager, and she became president of a small college, and she's doing very, very well. I could have done that, but I didn't. I chose not to. It was a little bit of intellectual laziness involved too. And also I had two very young children. That's probably the other thing that was a big factor. I did not want to devote the time to the doctorate that I would have had to with a baby that was 2 years old, or, a young child. So, but I think you've hit upon a very good point. Had I do it all over again, that would have been one of the first things and the first people I would have looked for.
Thank you. Yeah, if it is okay, because I know Emily is facilitating this conversation, and Corinne,
Okay.
jump in. Yeah, in the meantime, as you prepare, I would go ahead and ask another curiosity question, because that's a key word. I am a curious person, and I have tried a lot of things, and I failed a lot, but I've been a happy person. I think I have been very, very fortunate to find mentors, even if I was not very courageous to ask out. But I came with a purpose, like you're another point of think from the end. For example, I came to United States not just to get another degree, but I had a big purpose in mind, because I had just been part of establishing a university in my hometown. And I really wanted that fledgling to grow as a really good university. And I was looking for an opportunity to learn from all the people who have been there. So I came to, none other than the United States, where higher education institutions are, top of the rank. So that's the opportunity that brought me, and I was always purposeful. So I was asking those questions. I was even negotiating with my professors on the assignments they gave. I would sometimes say, you know what, this is I have in mind, and they were very kind, and they actually brought me, introduced me with the presidents, would invite me in the cabinet meetings, give me some of the other opportunities that would be meaningful to me. So that happened to me early on, Marg, because you struggled a lot, and I did too, but some of the good things happened to me. I think sheer luck, I would say, not because I was too smart, but I was purposeful and passionate. I think that purpose and passion helps you to do what you said, have the end in mind. Think from the end. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Think from the end?
Think from the end, not what is the next job going to bring? What is it that I want at the end of my professional career? Not your life, that gets too complicated, but at the end of your professional career, what is it that you would like to have created? What is it that you would like to have achieved? Again, if it's just because I made the mistake so often, the salary, the title, the corner office, that wasn't thinking from the end. That was thinking in the middle. That was thinking for tomorrow. That was not horizon thinking. It was at the end of my, and even now, Uttam, even now, I've had the opportunity to work at 3 wonderful universities, but the work that I'm doing now, the research, the writing, the sharing, this webinar, thinking from the end for me is a giving back to a profession, a giving back to young people, a helping young people, young scholars, young perhaps administrators who don't have the mentor or who don't have the opportunities that you were given and that I was not given. I had to create for myself. There's also another thing. I never felt that I was discriminated against because I was female. And I know that may shock some people, but I was not, because my work was so strong. What I was producing was so good. Again, when a university is so dependent upon one person and for 23 years they deliver that spoke for itself. But that wasn't thinking from the end. What I'm doing now in my consulting work, in my research, my writing, and in this wonderful webinar series that we will conduct over the next year, that's thinking from the end for me. So whenever I press the delete button, I feel I will have accomplished something. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Emily, can I go ahead and ask further questions? Or
sure. Yeah, we haven't gotten any questions in the Q&A yet, so participants feel free while Uttam is talking more with Marguerite. Feel free to drop in some questions. We'd love to have them, but feel free.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had a few questions prepared in advance. I think Marguerite covered a lot of ground, and what I would go and maybe ask is probably the last question here. Yeah. What are 2-3 pieces of advice you wish you knew when starting your career in higher education? Maybe if that piques your brain. Go ahead.
That someday this was all going to end. I had to play it. I had to be honest with myself and with the people I was working with. I wasn't always going to be at that particular school. I wasn't always going to be in that particular job. And so again, I go back to the thinking from the end. What is it that eventually I would like to leave as part of my legacy? I mean, such as it is. I mean, I'm just one person. But I think that is one thing that I was not curious enough about, Uttam. That was a fatal flaw. I got involved in office politics. I took sides. In a high stake controversy, and both the person that I supported and myself lost, and I should have followed my own advice and not done that. That was the second thing that I feel was much lacking in my professional discernment. And the third thing was not building the teams that I wanted, that I realize now was so vital to my success. Feeling I could do it all on my own, feeling that I could go it alone, feeling that because I worked harder and because not that I knew more, but I had a lot of experience. I've been doing this work for 50 years. As Krishna said, we should make you have the Lifetime Achievement Award. I said, no, I'm just so old that, when you start this job, I started working in higher ed when I was 17 years old. And I retired from full-time work at 65. So that's a long time with a lot of experience. But I didn't have the curiosity enough, Uttam, about other people's abilities to build effective teams. And that's why I'm so pleased that my two colleagues, Teresa and Gigi, will be giving the next webinar, because they have done it better than most schools and most professionals that I'm aware of. Those are the three things that I regret.
I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, the theme again is successful career in higher education, and you have a career trajectory that is very, very meaningful. People can learn a lot from that. And I don't know whether I would be a successful administrator or a faculty. I'm an associate professor now, recently got a promotion. And your career trajectory seems very fascinating to me too. And you said that you can create a brand.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, what happens is people in academia, in higher education, probably they think about the professoriate track more than administrative track, which you mastered, and you became the paragon of success. So thank you for that. Would you maybe elaborate a little bit on the keyword branding here? Because you are a brand now. Everyone knows who you are. What is the strategy for branding? Because a lot of people in academia don't use that word.
Right. Well, again, I'm, because my area of expertise is marketing, recruitment, and branding, and creating brand strategies. I've just flipped that to myself. And I said, okay, what is it that I would like to be known as? Your university, my university, is known for something. We do something, and and if it's an effective something, then that's the brand that we have. And it's effective when you go and recruit students. I wanted to brand myself as a very hard worker who would color outside the lines, who would take on additional responsibilities, who was ambitious. I was not afraid to let that show through. I was ambitious. I wanted more because I thought I was capable of being more. My former president used to say, Marguerite drives me absolutely crazy. She'll have 6 balls in the air all at one time. 3 of them will fall, but the other 3 will stay up, and they're usually worth something. That was what I wanted to be known as. I wanted to be known as an honest person. One of the financial aid directors used to say, on your tombstone, Marguerite, it's going to read, she was tough, but she was fair. And that was another important thing for me. So hardworking, not the last one in and the first one out. Hardworking, honest. That doesn't come up often either. But honesty, Uttam, it can be, academia can be very small sometimes. People can get into their, am I going to get that parking space, or are you going to get that? I mean, it can come down to that level of minutia. And I felt that I didn't want that for the people that were working for me, or certainly for myself as well. But honesty, you can't fake that, because the person you are and the person I am, that spills over into you don't shut your personality off when you get into the office in the morning. I don't shut mine off when I sit down at 9 o'clock and begin writing for the day. It doesn't happen. It's all connected. It's all connected. And so if you are an honest person, honest in what you're doing, and honest in what you're hoping to accomplish, what we have tried to, you and I have tried to accomplish today, whether we get questions from the audience or whether there's no one listening at all, doesn't matter. We have made a contribution, honestly made a contribution, and we hope that eventually it will get disseminated to the proper people. Emily has just reappeared.
Yeah. Thank you, Marg. I mean,
you're welcome.
I must acknowledge that what you have accomplished is already remarkable.
Thank you.
You just happen to be a woman, and I know that brings challenges,
Yes.
than opportunities. But you navigated this system, and you are who you are at this point, and you earned it all. You worked hard.
I have.
That sometimes
I really have,
even scares people, and I don't know if that is what cost you the other side, that you said you didn't network too much. So was that
part of it? You're very astute. That definitely was part of it. Yes. Yeah. I was.
And as a president of Star Scholars Network that has members all around the world, more than 10,000 of shining stars, and who are helping others shine, what I would say, Marg, is that you are the mentoring director of one of the fastest growing network.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you so very much.
You're not networking.
You're very kind. We must do this again, Uttam. We work very well together.
Yeah.
Emily,
that
we
works
finished? Are we done? Emily?
So there's one last question, and that is for Marguerite. Uttam, feel free to chime in. And it's sort of, what would you look for in a mentor? Sort of, what are the signs that a person would be a good mentor for you?
For me, someone who is honest, someone who has a level of integrity that matches my own, someone who is accomplished, who has succeeded in whatever capacity I'm looking for to succeed in. At the time, it would have been to be a vice president of a university. But I look for the human qualities, Emily, more than just what's on paper. What's on paper, there, for those of you that are doctoral students listening to this, or will listen to it, or will read the transcript of today's webinar, you're all so qualified on paper. Well, how are you going to distinguish yourself? How are you going to make it to be that you are the one that gets selected? And that comes from within. That's what you are inside. The honest level of integrity, the curiosity, that's what's going to set you apart. And so in looking for a mentor, I'd be looking for the same things.
Yeah, I think that's a hard question for me, but to make it easy, I think, I tend to learn from a lot of people, and I was very fortunate to have multiple mentors. Not everybody officially, like it can be, sometimes people who take care of you. And I think a good mentor is one who is ready to give back. Not everybody is always ready to give back and take care. Sometimes people are just struggling on themselves. And if they are not passionate and happy and willing to give back, then there is very little you will eventually get. So if it is not working, it's okay to move on as well, I think, because maybe it's a cheap word, shopping around, but I think you should be ready. Maybe you thought you cultivated a mentor who didn't turn out to be the one yet that you thought. Then the world is big.
Yes.
So I think, do not shy away from asking. And maybe you may find 3 different mentors that can help you in 3 different ways.
Yes, that's a good point. It's a very good point.
So it's not like not like being dishonest, or it's like a loyalty kind of marriage kind of thing, because it's a healthy, good relationship.
Right.
And it is human relationship. I would like to steal that word from Marg. It's human factor. So that is most important for a mentor to be successful, and that human connection actually helps that relationship of mutual growth. Because I have had mentees, and my mentors also say, Uttam, we are fortunate to have had a chance to work with you. I mean, that's a great, huge compliment coming from my mentors, but my mentees also, I've learned a lot from my mentees.
That's a good point. Very good point. Yeah.
So it's a mutually enriching relationship, and we should not shy away from reaching out to people and contributing what you have, and seeking out help is critical.
Yes. Well, I've learned a lot today, so you're my mentor too, okay? And Emily, I think, again, whoever you can share this with, and I don't mean to speak for Uttam, but for me, this is a really wonderful initiative. It's an opportunity to give back, and I hope that it'll be utilized, the information will be utilized in a way that will help some people. So thank you for organizing it, for all of the people that were involved, Emily and Karine, to put all of this together to make us look good on the screen and hear our voices. Thank you very, very much. And Uttam, I hope we get to do this again, you and I.
We must. Okay. It's a beginning, Marg.
Okay.
It's a beginning. And I want to definitely give out a big shout out for the outstanding job that you did, Emily, today. And Karine, your help from the back of the stage is very, very critical. We wouldn't be able to do this without your critical help. And thank you so much. And I would like to thank everybody that have joined us today from around the world. And I know this is being recorded, and I hope it will enlighten many of you. And as we said, it is a beginning of a conversation. We may have sparked some thoughts in you. You don't have to agree with what we said today, not everything.
Right.
Feel free to challenge us, send us questions, and engage in conversation. Go Stars.
Okay. Go Stars. Go Stars. Thank you all very much. Thank you. I enjoyed this so much. Bye, Karine.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
everyone. Bye, Emily. Bye, Uttam. Bye-bye.